we are ready to go. So what I am going to do is say greetings to all. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Refresh, presented by our friends at Circle K. Thank you so much. This is a time to connect, to be inspired, and to learn a little something. And ultimately, when you do, you feel a bit better about the time that you give and that we spend together. This is what Generation W is all about. It's been just about, I don't know, 3.5 weeks since we experienced Generation W, the positive and the possible. And I'm still, quite honestly, in a state of brain fog. And perhaps Dr. Pratt can help me with that, and we'll find out. I am so grateful for the months and months of living into the mantra, the positive and the possible. It's become like a daily guidepost for me, truly, reorienting my thinking in a time when so many arrows point down, when truthfully, all of us, what do we really want them to do but point up, right? It's being positive. It's recognizing the positive in others, opening our eyes and hearts to the possible, and understanding that the possibility that others are making happen, the possibilities, are ones for us to celebrate, lean into with them, and ultimately realize on our own. That is superpower. It's supercharging goodness and kindness and positivity and believing that we all have the capacity to be change makers, especially in the face of divisiveness and this incredible deterioration of trust. Just writing this morning to share with you actually helped lift my spirits. And it's what Dr. Chantel Prat would refer to as a dopamine hit. Right? It's my brain helping me learn. Dr. Prat, who we are so grateful to be able to call you friend, she's graced our stage recently at Generation W. And the thousands of people who got to hear her speak are still talking about her. And I feel blessed because as I am out and about in the world, Dr. Pratt, that's what people, they say things to me. Oh, I learned this. I heard her say this. Did you see that was so helpful? How can we get in touch with her again? They're still impacted by your teaching and their learning. Her learning in particular was sparked by questions like, why am I like this? What makes my brain work? Why does my brain react as it does? And that truly, I think I got this right, Chantel, really sparked your journey into discovering more about our brains and behaviors. Mm-hmm. Chantel Prat, PhD, is a prominent neuroscientist at the Institute of Learning, Brain Sciences, and a professor of psychology and neuroscience and linguistics. Oh my goodness, at the University of Washington. Yes, Washington, way out there for us. Dr. Pratt's field-leading research investigates how our unique brain designs and lifetime experiences shape the way we understand and operate in the world. We had such amazing feedback from all of you who attended Gen W or watched it virtually, and we're so excited to welcome her back today to answer more questions and dive a little deeper into the mysteries of dive into the mysteries and magic of how our brains work and the behavior in which it impacts. So Chantel, welcome to the Generation W family. You are in it now, girl, and we are not letting you go. We are so happy to have found you, so happy you grace us with your insights, your humor, and your great knowledge.
How lucky am I? I'm sitting here getting choked up. Thank you so much. The feeling is mutual.
Oh, that's so nice. Tell us a little bit. I mean, we have a lot of people on who were there. Some of them weren't, but tell us a little bit about your experience at Gen W. You took a leap of faith, right? We found you in Washington. This event happens in person in Jacksonville Beach, Florida. You got on a plane and you arrived
and it was absolutely unexpected. We talk about what's possible. Positive and possible. There's nothing in my previous experience with the word conference or even gathering that prepared me for the kind of connected togetherness and just high energy joy that was Generation W. And for those of you who were there, I think that the one thing, there's so many things to be grateful for. One is that I left openings in my plan. So let's talk about brains and how we sort of have different control systems. I didn't fully script my talk. I had communication points, I had slides. I knew that there were things I wanted to tell, but I left an opening to be there and react. And wow, did I? I was talking to people afterwards and I said, it was like I was just possessed. Everything was so contagious. The energy was so infectious. And I think that those of you who are there will agree that I was fully present in that moment, and it was amazing. It was just
And you were
exciting and rewarding.
fully present. And what we should do is share not only your full presence, because we put together this little video, which you have not seen yet, but everyone will see, which gives everyone a sense of this joy, connectivity, presence that you just remarked about. So Sherry Levin, our producer, thank you.
Oh boy.
So today, this is the day. You get to claim your freedom. You get to claim your power. You get to stand in the magnificence that you came here to express. Welcome to Gen W.
Our stories are so little revealed, but when we choose to share them, we create these incredible connections of positivity.
Resilience is a muscle. It has to be exercised each and every day.
It's been pretty amazing. This is my first time being here in person, and I am already filled.
I love that we have touched over 10,000 girls.
And anything is possible. That's what WOW is all about. Positive and the possible.
If ultimately we're going to be keeping our democracy alive, we need to fight for the rights of others. We need to fight for other democracies everywhere else.
The only thing that anyone else is going to really think is possible is the thing that you truly think is yourself.
You are neither an actor in nor the passive observer of your reality. You are the creator of it.
I hope to be remembered that I did everything in my power to see to it that what I experienced will never ever happen again.
Dare to risk, dream big, because the truth is, the world is waiting for you. Stop. Thank you, everybody.
Oh my goodness, it gives me chills all over again, right?
Yes, that was an awesome sample.
I know you made so many new friends. I saw you hanging out in the green room. But let's go back to your very powerful comment there, which is you are neither the actor or passive observer in your reality. You are the creator, which gives us tremendous agency as to our behavior, which we seem to outsource a lot in our brain. So let's start with that if we could. And by the way, everybody, this is an interactive conversation. If you're on Zoom or even if you're on Facebook, if you have questions or comments, please share them. We will try to find them and then get them to Dr. Chantel Prat, because it's this connectivity, this energy we can create that makes us all better. So let's just start there. We are not passive observers.
That's right. I think the biggest trick our brains play on us is to give us this illusion that we are taking in reality, like our eyes are like a movie camera, and that our understanding of the world is seamlessly, that there's no gap between the world as it exists and the world as we understand it. Instead, our brain is using all kinds of statistics based largely on our previous experiences to decide what's happening right now, to construct what's happening right now, and to use this to guide our decisions about what to do next. So, what I've been talking about recently, or even thinking about recently, is the relationship between our consciousness and the capital T truth, because I think that we think that our perspective is the truth, but instead our brains are giving us the information that they think will guide the decisions that maximize our success. And from our first person perspective, it feels like it's the whole complete truth, but instead it's been selected based on the messages we inherit, the messages we tell ourselves, which is where I think the positive has a really important like opportunity to play a role. And based on our previous experiences and based on things we have tried in the past that haven't worked out, and maybe things that we haven't tried in the past that we have imagined would or wouldn't work out. Like our brains create this version of the truth based on what they think will guide our successful decisions.
Okay, listen, there are so many things to tease out, and I'm sure everybody, I don't even know where to start here. All right. Let's go with this concept of based on previous experiences and how important are they? We have a teen girl program, and we are really about exposing girls to a broad swath of life to enrich their young lives, to be able to prepare them for their growing into lives. We think about America today being so divisive and being fed a consistent line of experience, keeping people narrow. And what I'm hearing you say is that that is bad for our brain health, informing our overall vision of the world.
So I think that I would say this. People who are exposed to narrow experiences are adapted to perform in a narrow world, right? So what you said something, there are so many things to unpack in what you just said, Donna. But I think, so one thing, I study differences. I'm very interested in what goes into our different perspectives and helping people to appreciate that their perspective is not the only perspective and is not necessarily the right perspective, even though that perspective that your brain gives you is so convincing. And at the same time, one of the most common quintessentially human things about our brains is that they learn and they adapt. So you're saying how important are experiences? I think your brain is motivated to drive you to success in the environments it has experienced in the past. We don't have instincts. We don't have a lot of instincts like many animals, right? So animals that have a narrow range of experiences are born with the tools they need to survive in those environments. Humans are born with the tool of learning which environments they inhabit and using data from those environments to drive their success. So I like to use language as an example. Infants are born able to detect all of the sounds in all human languages that exist on the planet. But as they're, by the age of 6 months, as they get tuned into the language or languages they're exposed to, they lose the ability to even hear some of the sound distinctions that are not in their languages. So on the one hand, language is an example of, as you get better and better able to communicate with the people you're exposed to, you lose the ability to communicate with a whole group of other people, right? So I think environment is like that. If you are exposed to a narrow set of inputs, a narrow set of environments, you'll be highly adapted to that environment. You'll function really well in that environment. But what happens is when we find ourselves in a new environment, we're using our old tools and things that were successful in that environment to try and operate in a place where we don't have data. And that's where things can go really wrong. And I think that's where a lot of disadvantage comes from based on things that are missing, opportunities that are missing in developmental backgrounds. So I just don't have the experiences or the tools to know what works here because I haven't been in an environment like this. So breadth of experience is incredibly important if you want to be able to operate in diverse environments.
I'm writing that down. As you know, I always take notes. Breadth of experience is vital if you want. God, we need to do some research together because this is definitely the thesis of this idea of bringing community together, right? How do I lead in a world of people with so many unique qualities, bringing so many different experiences? You heard my quote. We share so little of our stories, but when we do, we are enriched. And I guess what I'm saying was I am supporting this piece of your knowledge, which is until we know each other, it's really hard to be able to lead together, right?
That's so true. And there are reasons that our brains adapt to different environments, and there are reasons that brains work different ways. Because if we consider ourselves an in-group, if we consider ourselves a team, and that's something we can decide, we can make an explicit decision for, then having people with different perspectives in the same decision spaces increases our ability to consider the possibilities, right? So if 3 different people with different backgrounds whose brains have been adapted to perform in different environments can form a community of trust and can come to consider each other's perspectives instead of saying, oh, Donna, you see the dress as blue and black. I see it as white and gold. I can't trust you. Like, your opinion is different than mine. And therefore, I'm going to put a lot of energy into proving myself correct. Like that's where we live a lot of times, right? In our sort of divisive culture. But if you can say, how interesting that your brain constructs the world this way, that you make decisions this way, your brain has been fed different experiences. It offers me a different way to think about this. We can come together and make decisions based on sort of 2 lifetimes of experiences or 3 lifetimes of experiences that are, trained by different environments, and that then will transfer to success in different spaces. Right?
Yes. Totally. No. Totally. I totally agree. I just think there's so much. Listen, I got to go to the AI space right now, right? Because we think about our brains. We think about where AI is. We think about the manipulation of our brains through social channels, which actually is feeding us not the ability, I guess, not the ability to consider diverse opinions.
No, it
right?
just makes you think you're more right. I mean, that's the danger here, is that I think the difference between now and when I was a child growing up is that we had people from different backgrounds, but there were more shared experiences, right? Like, everybody watched the same news channel, and we talked to our neighbors in real life, and they might have had different political backgrounds or different origin stories, but there were more shared experiences and sort of agreement on common inputs than we have now, where now we spend how much of our day in a screen where the AI is trained to feed you the things that your brain, it already knows based on how long you pause over a picture. Or, do you want more baby goats in your feed? Yes, I absolutely do. And it feeds your brain what you already believe or what you already like. And even the posts and other people who believe like you do. And so what that means is that we are now trained by increasingly sort of different inputs. And not only that, but that your AI, if you're from a different background than I am, our brains are now adapting to more and more and more and more information that's different, from the news to the baby goats to whatever is in your feed. Baby goats in pajamas, that's my feed a lot. But our brain, because that gives me dopamine, right? But we become more and more different, but also more and more convinced that the world is like this, that everyone is like this.
Right. So we are really differing on this baby goats in pajamas thing. Yes. I don't.
They're so cute.
Yeah. Although I just got this thing about doing a tour with the goats in Iceland. I'm like, okay, well, what's that about? But okay, that's a sidebar.
That was probably an accident. The AI meant to send that to me.
They knew when I was talking, I'd share it with you. Now that would be a lot. You talk about inspiration. What does it take to be inspired? What happens in our brains? And what does it do for us?
Gosh, that's a great question. So I guess I will connect that to this, how do we see across differences, and say that there's something about social group, right? So there's something about identity, and there's something about shared stories. So going to your message about shared stories and going back to Generation W, I think one of the things that's so powerful there is that we instantly become a we, or at least that's what it feels like to me, that everybody in that place from different backgrounds, different belief systems is now a part of a we. And when they share their stories, you find an area of connection that then can inspire you, because you say, if you have this trust and you're not trying to say I'm right and you're wrong because you're a them, if you've become a we, then somebody else tells you their story, and it's an experience that feeds your brain, and that becomes a part of your story about possible. Right. So when I was giving my talk, I said, inspired. I feel inspired. I think that's how I started. I feel so inspired. And inspired really just means to take in breath, to take in air. And that is the energy that our bodies and our brains use to drive our behaviors. But I think that when it comes to the way our brains create realities, we get this inspiration by finding a story that we think, oh, that we can sort of incorporate into our sense of what's possible. Especially obviously we feel inspired by positive stories, right?
Right.
Chantel did this. It's so inspiring. It's a different view of success. She didn't quit. She even ate dirt on her along the way to try and
Right,
be an
that's right.
Olympic gold medalist, high jumper. And you think like everybody has struggles. They're different.
That's right.
And they have different opportunities to overcome those struggles. But you can hear about it over and over. And I think that there's something else there too. And that's that in these AIs, people gravitate towards things that are anxiety provoking.
Really? We gravitate towards that?
I think our brains are wired, if you think about it. If there's something dangerous in the world, oftentimes you only get one chance to learn about it.
Okay.
Right? If it could hurt you. So many people, not all brains are equally motivated or learning from things that are scary or disappointing, but many people spend a lot of attention on the things that are anxiety provoking. And because of that, you get a lot of things that are anxiety provoking in your feeds because, again, your AI wants you to slow down and think like bananas are killing people in, this area or who knows what, and we don't, I think that one thing we can do when it comes to positive and possible is actually amplify the positive stories. We, create that community of today, my neighbor brought me this and it helped me, or it's just, we don't hear that, we don't have access. And so then our brains represent the truth based on our inputs. And if our news feed is all negative, then we believe the world is negative. We believe the world is divisive. Those are our inputs.
Oh, right. Because I'm going to go back. Katie called it out here in the feed, but I also, this is one of you said it here and also in your talk, what you said, your brain does not care a lick about representing reality as a truth. And again, I talked about this deterioration of truth.
And trust.
You're questioning at the foundation. Is there a truth, or is it just a personal brain from each one of us protecting us from something?
That's such a good. So there is a truth, but we are not capable of knowing it, the whole thing. We are not capable of processing, of taking in all of the information in the world out there. So there's always a gap between the ostensibly knowable world and our version of the truth. And I think, my real purpose in writing my book was to show some very concrete ways that different brains bridge that gap between the truth that we can't process all of and our version of the truth. And if you can say that, if you can understand that, brains with different experiences, like, nobody feels threatened by the fact that I can't hear certain vowels in Tagalog because I'm a native English speaker. This is just a way our brains tune to our environments. But those same processes give rise to implicit biases that can be very dangerous in societies, right? And so if we can just walk through the ways that different brains understand the world, can you let go of the feeling of being right? Because you were saying they protect us. And I think that's really important because we all feel like we want to seek the truth. You're all sitting here going, what do you mean my brain doesn't care about the truth? Why am I listening to this neuroscientist tell me about how my brain works if I don't care about the truth? We are all curious and we all want to learn information because we know that that information can guide our decisions in the future. But what you may or may not be aware of is that your brain is curious about particular things, and those particular things are things that it has already decided are not a threat. You said is protecting you, are not a threat to you. And among the biggest, most central threats that our brains perceive are threats to our identity. So
really?
If there's
wait, it's threats to identity, not physical harm.
Well, physical harm, I think, is where these things arose.
Like not snake bites or poison or tornadoes or hurricanes.
Well, I think our brains were engineered for those things, right? But we're not exposed to those things now in modern society as often as we are threats to our identity.
Unless you live on the coast of Florida, hurricanes.
And probably snakes too, actually. I'm talking about speaking from a Washington State, no poisonous.
Point of view, right? Yeah.
But yeah, so I think that we feel curious and we feel motivated to tell the truth, but the secret in there is that your brain only makes you feel curious after it's decided that you're safe, physically and psychologically. And when you feel like that's stupid or that's wrong, when somebody else has an idea that's different than yours. I mean, we've demonstrated this in psychology experiments forever. It's confirmation bias. It has nothing to do with ignorance. In fact, the more intelligent you are, the more advanced the stories you can tell yourself about why a piece of evidence that goes against your beliefs is not valuable, is not valid, is not, whatever. Our brains protect our identity in a way that by sort of detecting threat and not making you feel curious when somebody comes in front of you with a different set of beliefs. And so I think that when I say our brain is not motivated in telling you the absolute truth, it's motivated in telling you the things that make you feel comfortable in the environments that you have been exposed to, which include your community and your sense of belonging.
And that's where I just went. I know I just went to gun violence, right? I'm thinking we have seen day after day. This is not like a weekly, monthly, day after day of people who have felt threatened by people who look different than them, never asked a question and pulled a trigger on a gun. And yet we pour more guns. We're not going to get into that talk, but like all of a sudden, this feels relevant in a different way.
Mm-hmm. That's right. And the different ways that we try and protect ourselves. And I believe that the data suggests that owning a gun actually, we get this because of perceived threat, but it actually makes us feel more threatened when we have a gun, because now we're like, have this gun and we're ready to use it. But yeah, I think that what that shows is that the close tie between our physical safety and our psychological safety, and the stories that we tell ourselves to make ourselves feel comfortable. And I think that, my sort of why in explaining that different brains understand the world in different ways, and that this starts at like very fundamental things from the color of the dress and scales up to your idea about groups of people or political values or whatever. I can't tell you how many times somebody said, how do I change somebody else's mind about blank? And then I kind of say like, well, how about examining where your ideas come from and being curious? Like, what might lead a person to behave this way? What life experiences, what communities, what kind of brain designs might lead this person to another view of reality that's equally valuable for them based on their life of experiences? That's their brain trying to guide their decisions. And how might that allow you to see your own perspective in a different way?
Yeah.
We can evoke curiosity through connection. And I think the biggest problem, you identified it right off the bat, it's a loss of trust.
Mm-hmm. I feel like I'm in class. Dr. Prat, I'm in class. I'm taking notes. Let me just say this.
I saw some things pop up too.
Welcome everybody to Refresh. We're here with Dr. Chantel Prat, an amazing neuroscientist from the University of Washington, recently with us for Generation W, speaking about behavior and our brains. We have a really nice question from Lish Simpson. You must know Lish. Defensiveness can come from when you feel criticized or attacked. We feel that a lot. We're still always in 6th grade or 3rd grade or whatever. Don't think we ever grow out of it. Do threats to our identity create defensiveness? Thus, our brain is trying to convince ourselves we are right?
I think it depends. So this is like different brains will learn in different ways from success and failure, from sort of like we know this, right? People are different degrees of open versus armored. But the answer is that for your most central, so you can actually think about this yourself. If you think about all of the things that are true of you, there are some things that someone might criticize that wouldn't matter to you. Like for me, I think I'm not really good when I drive in reverse. I'm great driving forward. But if someone said, you know what, Chantel, like you're crap at backing up, it wouldn't hurt my feelings. But if someone said, you know what, Chantel, you're a crap mother, that would hurt my feelings. That would upset me, right? They're different. And I think that that tells you something about your identity and which of those things are more core to your sort of beliefs about yourself. And I think that what happens is that when your brain is trying to protect something that's really central to your identity, it doesn't, it works like, let's say you're doing a task in the workspace and you say, pay attention, like I'm able to stay on task or not stay on task. When your brain is paying attention to a particular task, what it does is turn up the volume on the signals that it thinks are relevant to the task and turn down the volume on distractors. So this is one of the like really innocuous ways that your brain is not interested in representing reality. It distorts the signal, it turns down things that it decides are unimportant. But I think that when it comes to identity and feedback about beliefs that are central to your identity, it does the same thing. It turns down the volume on data that might be inconsistent with your beliefs. And this can happen for negative things too, right? Like when you're in depression and you're ruminating and you're thinking, I'm no good at blah, 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 and you don't actually remember a compliment you get or a successful story you have as well, because your brain at that point is invested in the story that you're no good.
Right.
So, you know, it can happen for positive and negative things, but your brain does change the volume of the inputs when it's trying to protect you.
So at this point, we always have our guests put together 3 key points that they want to make sure that our guests, our community leaves with. So let's take a look at yours. You've touched on a bunch, but worthy of us like focusing in, which is what you've been talking about now. Number 1, your brain constructs your subjective reality based on incomplete information. God forbid, what do you mean? I got the whole story, Mom. This is what
feels
happened,
like it. Mm-hmm.
right? But not.
So, I mean, it feels like we have, I think that, again, this is the problem, is the reality that we experience is so convincing to us. Like one of the biggest things our brain does for us that's really important is reduce uncertainty. It doesn't show us a lot of things that are unclear. It just decides this is this way, and it shows you that version, because otherwise we would be confused all the time. We're surrounded with ambiguity all the time. But if you're having a hard time sort of appreciating the way your brain creates your subjective reality, I always talk about, and I showed at Generation W, the dress that was blue and black and white and gold, to kind of show, like, not only do you like see this dress plain as day as one way or the other, but people see it in different ways. And that is really hard to kind of wrap your mind around, how someone sees something as white or blue based on their previous experience with shadows. But think about this, like every animal has different sensory organs that process the world in different ways. And just like I see the dress as blue and black and someone else sees the dress as white and gold, I navigate through space using sort of 3-dimensional cues or Google Maps or whatever. And a shark navigates through space using electromagnetic, fields of Earth's gravitational pull. I can't even sense that. And I think that's a really important way of saying your brain is not motivated. If our brains were motivated to represent the truth, then every animal would have organs to detect all the things. Instead, we have organs to detect the things that we think are going to be most successful in driving us through the world. And so then even given we look and we think we see green and blue sky and, this and that and the other, but that's just the way our brain is interpreting the bits of the physical energy that it thinks is important for driving us.
So let me ask you this then. I can see definitely, and we can spend a whole other hour, we don't have that much time left, on the macro implications of this. Mm-hmm. But can we drill down to the very personal? Mm-hmm. Understanding that this is what's happening. Understanding in a world where people feel personally disconnected, more isolated than they have before, although I've seen some of the loneliness numbers have actually trended up since the pandemic, which is encouraging. Mm-hmm. People's insecurity. How does helping this? What are the kind of things we can do to help us with this understanding feel better about ourselves and the world?
I think relaxing your assumptions that you're correct. I think if you really want to be a truth seeker, I think that this can help you personally and socially. I think saying, where did this idea I have come from? And I think the stories that we tell ourselves about ourselves is something that I'm really obsessed with right now. I'm like, where did I get the data for that story about myself? Would I tell myself the same story about myself if today was the first day I dropped into my life? Like, how much of what we think we're good at or bad at or motivated by is historical? How much
Right.
of that comes from feedback from society, and how much of that comes from within? So I think saying like, this is one perspective, these are my beliefs, like, where do they come from? And you can start from, why do I think the trees are green? Or, and then you can go like, why do I believe that equity is important? Or, what is my data? Where does that come from? And I think that that's important and interesting in knowing yourself. And then I think if you can appreciate that your version, that there are equally valid versions that are different than yours. I think that the biggest illusion is that there's one right or wrong. And if you understand that we're all taking incomplete parts of the data and we're using our unique life experiences to connect the dots in those incomplete pieces of data, you can see that there are different versions that are equally true and equally valuable. And I think that will, trust is the missing piece, because I think that what we're missing is trusting relationships where we have the opportunity to like share ideas, get feedback, and not be like, you're right, I'm wrong. Why are you lying? Like, you can definitely feel like someone's lying because you come away from the same experience with different memories.
Yeah, but okay, I'm going to go back to the social cultural. We do, the communities we live in are social constructs, right? We all have to buy in with a somewhat consistent shared set of values.
Mm-hmm.
And when those values conflict as violently as they do now, right? You can say, yes, you can pick any hot issue. You have to have a foundational belief, right, in community and connection that will keep you together. And if those are being undermined or eroded, we are in a bit of trouble.
I think to that point, one thing I can say is that talking to people about their values might give you a different answer than you think, based on you reverse engineering their values based on their own behaviors. I read an awesome book called I Never Thought of It That Way by Monica Guzman, where she talks about how when somebody has, believes differently on an issue or something than we do, we are drawn to think that they have the opposite values. But many of the issues that are in front of us are complex and multifaceted, and there may be some piece of that you've never even thought of that's important to them. It's not the same as saying your value is unimportant to them. So it's really, again, like, the value system is complicated. Most of our issues are multifaceted, and it's easy to say, like, if somebody votes different than you or thinks different than you, then everything is the opposite.
Right.
And it's not always true.
But that can kind of lower the temperature. We always like to know about people and their stories. We have about 5 minutes left. And, Chantel, you have an interesting story about how did you come to this work? How did you come to this work?
So I started out pre-med, and when I was growing up, there was this really popular show on TV, Doogie Howser, with Neil Patrick Harris. It was a kind of child genius doctor, and I loved him and I loved the show, and I was like, I'm going to be a doctor. This is like smart and successful. And, I started out in accelerated pre-med school. I was 19. I had taken all the classes I needed to get into med school, and I needed one social science class. And I took a psychology class because I was selling shoes at the mall during the day and taking this accelerated classes, and the psych class was a night school. And the first day I sat down, and the teacher told us this story of Phineas Gage, who was a railway worker who survived an accident in which an iron railroad spike blew up and out what I now know is the right frontal lobe of his brain. And it was like a gory and freakish. He actually like toured the circus scene for a while because he had a hole in his head. But he literally walked away from this, which is a miracle in and of itself. His physical things were all working, but his personality had completely changed. He was a lot more uninhibited. He was a lot less reliable. He was like a foreman, a manager before, and the guy everybody depended on. And he became a lot more susceptible to what they call animal desires. And it just hit me like, like lightning that, I'm studying all the organs of the body, and here's an organ that makes you you. If you change this organ, you change the person. And so I was like, I need to understand how in the heck how does this happen? In my mind, it was like, oh, this is the part of the brain that is like yourself. And this is the part. No. But so I went back to school, and the other thing that happened to me in that same year of my life is that I got pregnant. So that was like pivot. I went from being a pre-med student to a single mom and studying the brain. And all of those things happened for me because I actually got my first job in neuroscience because I had experience with babies. They were looking for someone to entertain babies while we recorded activity from their brain. And I was like, I literally stalked the woman and said, look how much experience I have. I have my own baby. No one else on this campus can say this. And together we sort of went about experiencing the relationship between the mind and brain, starting out by learning that my daughter Jasmine's brain is actually reversed. She is I found out that her brain was functionally reversed before I found out that she was left-handed. I scanned her when she was 17 months old and found out that language is bigger in the right half of her brain. And from there on out, it was like, we need to understand differences, not understand how brains work on average, which was the main paradigm for studying this, and still is.
That how our brains are different.
Right. So everything that.
So here's the average brain. Averages are so misleading, aren't they?
They're so misleading. They're not even based on. They're based on college undergraduates who I love dearly, but they're a very niche group that's adapted to a very particular environment. And, it gives us this one size fits all account of how brains work that doesn't really fit anyone in the real world very well. And it leaves us all feeling a little abnormal when in fact we have this representation that there's like a single space that is how brains work. And then if you're away from that, you're different or weird and it's just.
Wow. I have to just say, I hope that everybody here who's been part of this conversation and who will see this, I have taken away so much from today. Not only I have all these notes and stuff, but so much richness to think about. And one that the overriding calming thought, there's two of those. And one, I'm going to go back to what you started with, which is you are neither the actor or passive observer in your reality. You are the creator. Wow. Talk about agency, self-determination, all of those things. That's really important. Mm-hmm. But also the fact that our brains adapt to the input like any other kind of organ, I guess, whatever you put in will come out somehow. And we got to be thinking about that more as we interact in the world, both in terms of how we see the world and our brain interprets it, and then as others who we interact with see the world and interpret it, right? And I just think it's so fascinating. I'm so grateful for the time you continue to give us at Generation W and beyond. And we look forward to keeping in touch with you on these kinds of issues. And I keep the conversation going, if that's okay with you.
Of course. We already decided I'm in, right? Like,
you are
this is my family.
Forever, girlfriend. That's all I just say, right? So many nuggets today. Let me share with everybody. Generation W will be in Orlando next week, working with the amazing WOW girls in the Orange County Public School District. We call it WOWsdom. It's when the WOW of girls combines with the wisdom of women. And that's been coming together now for 10 years when we founded Generation WOW on the ethos of, yes, the positive and the possible. So we can share more with you when we are back, and we will be back because we are now back every other week on May 10th. Joy Kurtz, if you're not here, it's not happening. I just want to let you know. Thank you for all of the new people who have joined us, but come back again. We'll be with this wonderful licensed clinical social worker. Her name is Amy Hope Latham. And we met Amy. We created a program called, you didn't know this, Chantel. I'd love to spend a little more time with you on this. It was called Links to Leadership. And it was geared to up and coming young professional women golfers. And we did 2 programs back to back, and it was amazing. And Amy came with us one year, and her insight, she has a practice that does focus specifically on athletes and beyond. but her insights, well, what can I say? They were wow, just like yours. So let me say this. Thank you to Dr. Chantel Prat. We so appreciate you. And I hope you hear that loud and clear. That is my truth, our truth, okay? And we're going to ask
I hear it and I feel it. Thank you so much.
And we're going to ask everybody to join us back on Refresh on May 10th, when we will spend some time with Amy Pope Latham. Thank you all, and have a great, great afternoon, or wherever you are, whatever part of the day. Enjoy it.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for listening.